Well, wonderful. Thank you all so much for having me on tonight. And if you will just excuse some of my background, of course, it's Sunday evening. I'm watching football and taking a moment to enjoy some of that. But I'm glad to be with you tonight. I've certainly enjoyed all of what I've heard tonight, just in terms of the engagement, politics a year round, and engaging in the electoral process. And so, absolutely, I am a Commanders fan, big time. And we're a little bit concerned, even though I have on blue tonight. The Cowboys won. My daughter is a Cowboy fan, so she's waiting to talk to me. Let me just speak a little bit toward the idea of what we're just discussing tonight. And I wear several different hats in regards to what we do in our ministry, and indeed the work that we do in working with the homeless community and working with those who are less fortunate, the low to moderate income in our areas. And so, so much of what I heard tonight is so critically important to be engaged, not only at the executive level in presidential races and statewide races, but it's so important to be engaged in local races. I often like to remind people that all politics is local, and that you hear this term NIMBY, not in my backyard. Well, you'll come to find in many instances that your quality of life or quality of living happens right in your local area with your city council, with those who are on your school board, and with those who represent you in your state house. And so, having said that, some of the work that we do is helping people engage in a way where they become upwardly mobile. And so, as a part of our First Foundation's home ownership program that we do, all of that I explain to people is block granted to the state. So it matters who your representative is, and it matters who your governor is. I'm not ashamed to say that one of my proteges, Candace Holly, is the political manager for Abigail Spanberger. She started with me when she was in high school, and I was her high school Bible teacher. Absolutely, Candace is a protege of mine. I pretty much taught her all of what she knows. Most people are not necessarily, Andrea, familiar with my political background in terms of I was Congressman Scott's very first intern while in Maine, by the way. I was a Washington Center Fellow and a Congressional Black Caucus intern and a White House intern. This would be 91, 2, and 3 during my sophomore, junior, and senior years of college. And so Maine exposed the opportunity for me to be engaged in politics. And this is what gives me kind of the impetus, if you will, to speak to the point that all politics is local. Here in Virginia, as you know, we're in a very critical race that will determine the future, not only here in Virginia, but I believe the nation and the world. We often hear that phrase that says, as Virginia goes, so goes the nation. And so the current election here is going to be critically important, but that won't be possible until we get out the vote. And I heard one of the gentlemen mention that many within our communities, when I say our, I'm talking Black and brown communities, may have a sense of apathy. And what the Center for Common Ground does is ensure that individuals are engaged and involved so that there's training, there's education, there's development, but also from a policy perspective. Just a few quick points. You know, when we think of the current White House and its impact on the idea of the big beautiful business bill or whatever we want to call it, it's coming. A couple of policy points about that is weakening the social safety net in terms of what we look at with SNAP programs, worsening the racial gap and the divide. It's almost as if we're headed for another civil war of ideas here in America, where right and left can't find the common ground to be able to work together so that we're all able to live well together. The restricting access to higher education, harming minority owned businesses, dismantling civil rights protections that we've fought for over the years, rolling back environmental protections, and the list of things goes on and on and on. And so I cannot stress how important it is that electoral politics and engagement in what the Center for Common Ground does it all year around, not just at one time. You know, Dr. King made these thought said made these this kind of commentary. He said a threat to justice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere. I like to amend that by simply saying a threat to democracy anywhere is a threat to democracy everywhere. And since we were speaking a little bit about the faith traditions in regards to this, you know, it's so important that people of faith engage and are involved and also informed and educating. I wonder what would happen if you had persons of faith across all persuasions who banded together and bonded together around issues whereby which we're able to bring about change in the lives of people so that our quality of life is able to live better. One of the professions I operate in is I'm the doctor of ministry person for the School of Religion at Hampton University. And I'm always talking to pastors about social justice and engagement with your congregations. Another role, I'm working in the School of Liberal Arts as well, and I'm teaching classes in ethics and philosophy, political science, and also public policy. And so that's some of my background as well at the same time. And so when we think about Second Chronicles chapter 7 and verse 14, we all know it. The scripture says to us, if my people who are called by my name would humble themselves and pray, the scripture says that God says he will hear from heaven and he will hear the land. And again, we know that we do not add to scripture nor take away from scripture in any way. But if I could contextualize it, I would say if all of God's people um, would begin to humble themselves and not only just pray, but vote. Because God is not going to do for us the things that we can do for ourselves. We've heard our brother say tonight about James in the book of James, in terms of our faith without our works is dead. And so our faith is an engaging process where we are constantly inside of the voting booth, speaking with one loud voice, when we can rally around issues together. Let me just kind of leave this tonight, Andrea. Thank you so much for having me, because the times that we are in are critically important. And what we can't do is lose our democracy within this republic for how we are represented all throughout the nation. And the work begins every single day, years or two before each election, and that's on every level. And so to have persons engage and people of faith engage, the work that we do, we liken it to the work of Jesus. And I'm in Matthew chapter 25, where the scripture begins to say to us, as Jesus is giving a parable in Matthew 25 in verse 34, here's what he says. I like to read it to us. The Bible says that the king will say to those on his right hand, come, you blessed my father, inherit the kingdom prepared for you from the foundation of the world. For I was hungry and you gave me food. I was thirsty and you gave me drink. And I was a stranger and you took me in. I was naked and you clothed me. And I was sick and you visited me. I was in prison and you came to me. Then the text says, and the righteous will answer him, saying, Lord, when did we see you hungry and feed you, or thirsty and give you drink? When did we see you a stranger and take you in, or naked and clothe you? Or when did we see you sick or in prison and come to you? And the king will answer and say to them, assuredly I say to you, inasmuch as you did it to one of the least of these, watch what the scripture says, my brethren, you did it to me. And so I often encourage policymakers that we must always consider the margins, the least, the last, and the lost, to ensure that they are included, that they have upward mobility and are able to not only survive, but thrive just like the rest of us. And so one of the ways that we can do that is engage in education and our financial support for the Center for Common Ground to ensure that those who are least, last, and lost are indeed loved in a very practical and tangible way. Thank you so much, Andrea, for having me tonight, and great to be among these giants who are engaged in electoral politics.